I'm putting the rest of the cladding on this wall here. Maybe able to see I did a little bit around the corner there yesterday. I didn't do a video of that because it's the first time I'd done it. I didn't want to stuff it up on camera. So I learned some things. I thought I would show other potential builders how I did it. The most important part is, as best I can tell anyway, the starter strip that goes along the bottom. You may not be able to see that in the frame now. I'll show you that in a minute. But all of the cladding sits on the starter board. It uses these little plastic strips here, which you can take out. Just a little T piece that slots into there, and that clips into the starter strip that's down there, and that provides support for the first row. Put the first row in, and then the second row will lean on the first, and so on all the way up. So getting the first row right is super important because it'll save you lots of work on the subsequent rows going up. And therefore, the starter strip. The starter strip screws into the house frame a certain distance down from the frame. It's really difficult for me to measure that because I have this insulation in the way. I've had to kind of guess a little bit, trial and error, straight away to figure out what the appropriate measurements look like on the outside. But I did that with the previous wall, so I knew where to start on this wall. The other thing that I have done is here on my corner stop, I've also marked where each row of cladding on the other wall sits, so that when I put my row in and put it in, I know that it's going to be at the right height. So if you're looking at the house from over there behind the camera, all of the cladding rows line up as they should. Let me show you the starter strip and what I've done to set that up. What I've got here is a piece of the starter strip. It's a long piece, 2 and a bit meters long. You can see it's got a kind of J profile shape, and this allows our sample piece of cladding to sit in there and hook down onto the bottom part of the J like so. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, there we go. And then rest up against the house. So getting our starter strip set up correctly is pretty important. So you can see my one down here. Might move that down a little bit more. There we go. That's a little better. So you can see this one here. It's been screwed into the house frame, so it's nice and tight, so that when we put our strip in, it'll go in like that all the way along, and the next one will join up. So it's imperative that this is laid level according to the house frame. If your slab or your ground slopes very slightly, you may need to accommodate for that, because as you get up towards the roof there'll be a slight slant, and you may have some troubles later on. The other important thing that I found when I was doing the other cladding around the corner was to make sure that the starter strip, the bottom part of the J, and the edge of it here are all in a straight line along the edge of the wall. If they're not in a straight line, then your cladding's going to be have little warps in it along the way. You can kind of work those out, but if this is straight to start with, then this is a lot better. So what I've done is I've set up a string line here along the very edge of my starter strip, all the way down to the other end, and I've gone through with more screws and adjusted it very slightly to pull it in a little bit more against my insulation, which is compressible slightly, to pull it into a straight line. So along with being straight that way, it's also spirit level straight as well, which matches my house frame. So this will allow me to start putting my bottom row of cladding in, and we'll see how that looks once I've done that. So I've very temporarily got my first row of cladding in. I need to go through and finish putting in all of the screws. I haven't done that as yet. It's just being kind of held there while I check all of the levels. But one thing that I thought I would show you is kind of how it looks. So this is our first row, this would be the second row, and you can see with the little clip that's on the back, this little piece of plastic, how it hooks over the end here, over the top, and provides support for the bottom of the next piece, and so on all the way up. But one of the things that's really interesting about this is that when you get a full sheet, the plastic doesn't extend all of the way through the sheet. There's a gap of about that much at one end, and that's for joining them. So what you will do is you can move this strip in and out, especially even on the big ones it's possible. Sometimes it's a bit tight, but still doable. And what you can do is you get your second piece and you join them together like that, and now it's supported through the join, so that when it sits it's supported properly, and you don't have to worry about fixing on the bottom because it's held in place by the plastic. So when you come along and put your sealer in there, that'll help retain everything together, and you'll have a nice finish at the end. I just thought that I would point that out because it's not super obvious that you can do that, but that's why it's missing that little bit on one end of the board, so that when I join my two long links together down there, they're nice and supported. So I'm going to go ahead and finish putting this one in, and then I'll show you how I'm actually putting this up on my own, and some useful tips and tricks on doing that. So one of the things I need to do before I continue putting the rest of the cladding up, even though I put the first row in, is to put these little guys up. And these are part of the insulation system here, this Kingspan air cell system, and a whole bunch of these come with it, as well as these rolls. They provide you with a sheet of instructions here, which I've already read and mirror pretty much what's in the construction manual from Paal anyway, so I'm not going to go through that. So there's, I think, a whole bunch of these anyway, but there's 5 per strip. They do just tear off, they're quite easy. They've got adhesive on one side, and what they do is they're meant to stick in between the studs. You can see where my studs are here, and they sit in the insulation in the middle and push it in slightly against the cladding to provide the correct insulation for our system. So it's going to be one there, and another further down about there-ish, and another further up. The specifications call for 3 of these per square meter. So if you look at the next stud spacing, it's going to be there, and another one probably over there. So in this square meter, it's going to be 3. You can probably move these ones over into the next stud spacing if you really wanted to. I've done the maths and I've counted these out, and I have a surplus of these, so I'm using a few more around the place to provide a bit more insulation gap. I'm putting up the cladding mostly on my own. So I'm going to show you how I do that. The lengths are quite long. They're 4.2 or around that measurement. They are meant to be carried by 2 people, and I find as you get higher up on the wall, you do need 2 people to get it up there. But at the lower levels, and I'm not actually moving too far from my pile of cladding to the wall, so I've been doing it on my own. I'll show you how I do that. It's mostly about preparation again. So what you may see is I have my drill about halfway in between where my board is going to start and end. So I'm putting a full length board in, starting at the door over there, working back this way. So what I'll do is I'll put it up and quickly grab my drill and a couple of screws that I have in my pocket here, and then temporarily anchor that into a spot where I can adjust it. It's not very difficult, but I thought I would just show you anyway. So one of the learnings that I've had putting this colour bond up, and it's mentioned in the book, is that it's sometimes easier to pre-drill the holes through the cladding, which I did on the side that I've already completed. You could do it, and I think I'll continue doing that with the rest of this job. So what I need to do now is make sure that the little plastic bit on the back is hooked into the previous sheet. You can do that by checking underneath it. If there's a gap, then it hasn't sat in there correctly, and you need to adjust that. So I'll do that now, and you can see. about, but it's sitting in there nice and straight, and it's caught on the little plastic sleeve on the inside, so sitting in there right and looking down the line where they join, you can see it's nice and straight, so that's exactly what I'm after. I'm now going to measure the next part, which is just over there. I'll move the camera around so you can see. So I'll measure the next part, chop it off with the saw, which I'll show you, and we'll put that up, and that'll be the second row. I know the measurement, it's 3132 millimeters. So I'm going to cut that off the boards. Now remember, my board's 4.2, so I'll measure it out, and I'll cut it off, and I'll show you how I'm cutting it off. Now, I'm not using the score and snap knife that came with the kit. I had a practice of it and I wasn't very good at it. So, considering I'm doing all of my cutting outside, I decided to use a circular saw with a fibre cement blade on it. This blade only has 4 teeth, and it does a great job at cutting up these fibre cement boards. Paal recommends, as do the manufacturers of the board, that you wear respiration masks, eye protection, and have a vacuum extractor for this guy. So I'm going to go get all that plugged in and chop it up, and show you how to put the last little piece up. It's easy as. So I've got some help now. See, there's my help. There's the camera. He's going to help me guide it onto the plastic spline, and then I'll be able to attach it properly. With 2 people, it's much easier, even if he's just a little guy. So, look, it took a while to get that trimmed just right, but we got there. It's now sitting even, straight, flush, sitting down in the little groove that it's meant to sit in. So I'll start the next one. It goes easier from here on up until you get to the windows. That's my daughter who wants my attention.